Are you a guy and you're really trying to develop your skills in an area? Maybe in your personal and or professional life. Maybe it's something like a sport. Maybe it's your social skills. Maybe it's your dating skills. Maybe it's your skills in a musical instrument. Well, today I'm going to share a perspective on this that I found has really helped me boost confidence in multiple areas when building a skill. And if you stay until the very end, I have an extra point for you then as well. As always, if you want to connect with me further, you can do so by clicking on my social media links in the show notes below. Now, I've learned from building up skills in multiple different areas. Of course, you're probably, well, I think most of us are aware that different things require different skills. And for me, confidence in things comes from building a skill, and that comes through practice and repetition a lot of the times. And I always come back to my definition of self-esteem and confidence. For me, self-esteem is about how much you love yourself. We're not talking about skills, achievements, these kind of things. For confidence, I define this as the trust you have in yourself as a guy. So for me, if you've got a good level of self-esteem, you're more likely to try things and keep persevering. You can still be confident in something though and not have such a great relationship with yourself, as I found. Like, people can be very skilled at their jobs, even a certain sport or an instrument, but they haven't even built up the skill of developing their own relationship with themselves. Now, for me, I wanted to talk about this today because I think there's a lot of information that comes at us left, right, and centre, certainly being bombarded. We're in a world that's competing for our attention, and it's like, who am I to listen to? How do I build up this skill? And then you just get so overwhelmed and you do nothing. I've certainly been there. Now, I was thinking back at examples in my life, like learning to drive a car. I remember the talk going through my head like, well, I'm never going to learn to drive. I'm just going to have to get a taxi everywhere when I'm older. Now, that would have probably helped me with my finances. Well, actually, now I do live in a place where I can walk everywhere. There are many years, though, that I needed a car, so I'm glad I did build up that skill. But at first, I was awful. I just kept stalling, all these kind of things in my car. Football. I remember when I first played football, or soccer if you're in the US, and I would not be very good, to be honest. I used to embarrass myself, all these kind of things. And then I got like player of the season like a year later. I just really worked hard on it. I've been in jobs when I was like, oh, this is so hard. Even like recently, like I've like, oh, this is so hard. And I built up the skills and I built the confidence. I've been very annoyed, very angry in the past. And then it's really not helped me with my self-talk. And when we become unconscious, I believe, and just like, that we're just like, oh, this is hard. I'll never overcome this, and we forget our own greatness, then it can be quite damaging to our mental health as well as impacting on our own growth. So the 4 levels of skill building I learned from one of my mentors, and it's these that I want to outline to you. At first, we have, when we're building a skill, unconscious incompetence. Means we don't know what we don't know. Like, there's going to be things that we don't realize we've got to get better at that we have to do, and we're not doing them, and we're not skilled, right? When we're building a skill in anything, whether it's sport, whether it's your social skills, whether it's a musical instrument. And then the next level is where most people, from my experience in my own life, give up. It's conscious incompetence. So you're aware at what you're not very good at. And this is where the skill really, you make it or break it if you keep going and you keep like moving through it. Conscious incompetence is you're aware of the things. However, now that you're aware of what you're not good at or where you need to develop, that is really, I should phrase that better. But yeah, we're not very good at something at the start, are we? Right, should just be honest about it. But when you're really trying to develop it, you then have, and you're like, you feel like you can't, and you're not going to move forward. That conscious incompetence, whereby you're frustrated at the things you can't do, triggers up a couple of fears. The fear that you're not enough, and therefore the fear of not being lovable, which is the deeper one. That if you can't do something, it's going to result in like fear of not being enough, right? And that's why most human beings want to feel that. I've certainly felt like that. I don't want to feel like I'm not enough. But when I've certainly really struggled with something, it's brought up that fear. The next level is when you're really developing, and this is conscious competence, whereby you're quite skilled, you're getting this skill, and you're aware of what you're doing. You still have to think about it quite a lot consciously, though. And then the fourth point is when you're unconsciously competent. So you're just so good at something you don't even think about it. Like I was talking about driving a car. You become so good at driving a car, you don't even have to think about it, right? You see some of the best athletes or sports people in the world. I'm just thinking of like Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo in my favorite sport, football. And they do amazing things. Like they were two of the best. Arguably, there's more players coming onto the scene now, and they're kind of at that age where they're going to retire in the next couple of years. Well, debatable. And they can do things, or the best football players do things and not even aware now that they do. Right, and they would have gone through those stages of skills. Now, obviously, there are things I do consider like natural talent and all these kind of things, but with a work ethic, it can really build up. So I wanted to talk through my approach to skill building now. Maybe you're frustrated, maybe you're like, I just want to move forward and it's really getting to you. Well, here's my guidance, right, on skill building. The first one, number one, you've got to know where you want to go, right? I've many times through my 20s been like, right, I'm going to do a bit of this, bit of that. And there's a real huge tendency to do that in today's world. I've noticed from having spoken to many people. We get distracted, so we're like, oh, we're no good at this thing, I'm going to try this. Or the shiny object syndrome, as it's known as. And we've got all these temptations. Oh, if you learn this skill in like 2 days, you're going to make millions in your sleep, and all that kind of marketing rubbish that comes up, right? I'm not saying there's some great marketing, genuine stuff out there, but there is, unfortunately. Maybe that's a bit exaggerated, but that kind of thing. But there's all these kind of distractions like, oh, I want to try this, I want to try this. Take some time and figure out what you want, not what you're programmed to want. A good way to do that is spend some time, no phone, nothing with yourself. You take your phone if you really need it, but make sure you got it on like airplane mode or something like that, so you're not going to go on the internet or anything. But spending time with yourself to really figure out and keep asking yourself that question. I spend at least 30 minutes a day with myself just going for a walk, and I just ponder on questions. Ask yourself where you want to go is a really powerful one, because you don't know what skills you need to build until you know where you want to go, right? So it's pointless you building up the skill at playing a piano if you want to be a top quality runner, right? That's a silly example, but we can get into things like working on things that don't even matter to us because we become so unconscious to what we're doing, because we're human beings. We can't think about everything. So sometimes we're just like doing things without a reason. So coming back to where you want to go is the key question, number one. The second one, what are the 1 to 3 skills? Try not to make it more than 3, because then the brain starts getting overwhelmed. It's like, oh my God, I've got so much to learn. What are the 1 to 3 skills that you need to build in order to get that? So for example, it's like you want to get very good at making money, and maybe your vehicle for that is sales. I'll just use this as an example, having been in that myself. So the skill you want to get better at is having good quality conversations with people and asking questions. So what you do is you do a lot of role play and practice with people, having these kind of conversations, getting to know them. I'd argue that's a good one, rather than like, okay, I've got to do this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, right? Just picking the most essential ones. You want to make more friends, and you want to build your network. Well, a skill in that is like your social skills. So maybe you make the effort to go out there and then start saying hello to people, starting up conversations. And that's a skill in itself. One skill that I really suggest is the skill of listening. A lot of human beings, in my opinion, don't have it, right? People will offer to listen, but they won't necessarily listen because not everyone's got that skill to do it. Hearing something and then just giving your own bias is not, in my opinion, or your own advice, which isn't really advice. It's usually an opinion, what people usually say. Advice is when they genuinely know, or they're coming from somewhere of experience. But a lot of people will just kind of give advice. So like listening is a really good critical skill. And when I meet listeners who are really genuinely good, and I know quite a few in the coaching world, you are going to feel heard, and that creates really good connection. So building up the skill of listening, if you want to develop your network and people, that's where you want to go, then that's going to be a really good skill to work on. And then the third question to ask yourself is, how are you going to incorporate those skills in your life? Maybe you have a busy day-to-day role, but maybe you schedule, there's one essential skill that's going to help you get to where you want to go. So maybe you schedule 20 to 30 minutes before you start work, or at lunchtime or after work, where you can really work on that skill. And you do that every weekday, for example. Lock it in your calendar and schedule it, because otherwise it's like, all right, I'm going to work on this skill. Then you're like, oh yeah, I've not got around to it yet. When it's scheduled, it becomes more realistic. Right, trust me on that one. I've done years and years in project management, a long time in sales and various organizational things. And when you schedule something, it makes a massive, massive difference. So those are the three first points I want to share with you on skill building. I've got a final point that I think is going to be really beneficial to you. Just before I get onto that though, once again to mention, if you want to connect with me further, you can find me on social media. Links are in the show notes below. So my final point to you is this: role model someone. If you want to build a skill, one of the quickest ways is to role model someone. This is not like comparing yourself to someone else. Don't go down that route, because that's just going to damage you. This is about, oh, that person's really skilled at that thing. Great, that gives me opportunity to build skill in it as well. How can I learn from them? And there's three things you want to role model. Number one is their physiology, the way they move, like their stance. Like if they're confident in something, start taking that into your stance. I remember trying to role model like confidence in the workplace and like being able to interact with people. So I just studied Harvey Specter of Suits. He's a very charismatic lawyer, and I started using his body language and looking at that, right? And I started incorporating it, right? Then the second thing you want to incorporate is their beliefs. What is it that they believe about themselves, others, and the world? Like if you're believing, I'm useless, I'm not good at this, the world doesn't give me opportunities, people are harsh, and you're wanting to like build your social skills, well, someone who's really good at socializing, that kind of like energy of the room, it's not about you becoming there, but what would they believe? They probably believe, the right people like me and the wrong people won't, right? They'll probably believe things like, there's a lot of amazing people in the world to meet, and it's like, also, the world is a great place to meet people. Those are the kind of things they're going to believe. So start writing those beliefs and embedding them in your own system. And you can embed them by just reading them again and again and again. That's a really powerful way. And then the third thing is their syntax, the order they do things. So what is it they do to make them successful in that skill? What is the order they do it? And if you can start embedding that into your life, that's going to really, really help as well. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about skill building today, how I've been able to build skills. And the final thing, if it's an extra bonus point I want to give you, is look at in your life where you're really good, you're very skilled at something, and see if you can reverse engineer that a little bit. You're like, okay, you're very skilled in a certain job. How did you get so skilled in that? Very interesting. What do you do to make you feel very confident and skilled in that area? And how can you incorporate that into something new that you want to build a skill, but maybe you're at the beginning or you'll challenge with a little bit? So that's what I got for you today. I appreciate you for being here. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.